The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast NH. This is a podcast designed by writers for writers on the journey to being published. Joined Mandra Biscornet.
It was so healthy and nutritious.
Deborah Monk.
Can we open each podcast with a dance number?
Shelly Devlin.
It was so full of inspiration and sparkles.
Every Tuesday morning live on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to catch the podcast anytime on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. It's time to be inspired, feel empowered, and be well with the Writer's Block Podcast NH.
Welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm Shelly.
I'm Debbie. And Mandra, you look a little different today.
You do look a little different.
I am. The camera's put on a little bit of weight.
Woohoo! We have a special guest today. Mandra is vacationing, and thank you for joining us here at the Writer's Block. Our mission is to inspire, empower, and help people be well. Our guest is Rick Peoples.
Yay, the fabulous Rick Peoples.
Woohoo! Now listen, I want to tell you the irony of the small world with Rick on how I met him. And now Deb is his new BFF because I've only met Rick twice. I think it was 3 times, Rick, though. I think it was 3.
I'm not
I think
sure.
it was 3.
Who's counting?
It was an adult education class that I found and said, come on, let's do this. And I think she only did it just to be my friend because she was like, seriously. Small town adult education class.
At the middle school that my
You realize
daughter
I'm a
went to.
published author, don't you?
I didn't say any of that.
That's right.
But I think I did tell you I could only make about 3 out of the 6 classes, which I don't know if that really counts, but...
Well, and
That's-
I did go. I pretty much, you asked me to do something, the answer is always yes. Will you? Yes. And then I find out what it is. There are 2 people, you and Brenda, but
Mandra,
Jonathan
did you hear
wishes he
that?
was on the list.
Mandra and Jonathan, did you hear that?
I'm on the list.
But I also my intent was to scout other writers. I thought there are other people and I need more writing friends.
Right.
So,
And I mean, and since then, you two have started your own writers group outside this adult education class.
Yep, with
Which I
3
don't
others.
I don't remember receiving my invitation, but maybe it got lost in the mail.
Well, it was all about people that actually showed up to class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you had to have
Okay.
adulted the hell out of the class to be invited to the group. That was the first test, and
yes,
you failed.
We did invite you.
I'm telling you. And then in a small world, you told me about this young, fabulous, up-and-coming artist in California who happens to be Rick's daughter. So she did a little editing for me.
Yep.
And then I'm cutting hair about a month ago, and one of my clients who, gets a haircut, I hope she's listening, twice a year, whether she needs it or not. She also, her first haircut almost, I was afraid for the tires on my car because I cut 3 feet off of her hair that day.
Yeah, that was a big day.
Right? And she's telling me about her friend who wrote this great book. And she said,
And the name of it
Listen,
is?
Hey, Ma, your husband's dead. And it's a
Great
picture of a
title.
refrigerator on the front. And I said, why is this having deja vu? Why? It's because you had showed that to me from the writers group. So all of these connections in a small world is
It
amazing.
is a very small world.
It's great. It's great. I love it. Our paths always cross.
Yes. So, Rick, you've got to tell us. Your book has been out for just a couple of weeks. Ma, your husband's dead.
Yeah. So, I'm really kind of fortunate about it. It's my brother helped me with the title. It's gone through a lot of alliterations, and though I do think it sounds better with a Boston accent. So it's like, hey, Ma, your husband's dead.
Oh, it does. You're right.
I love
sounds
it.
better.
Yes, much better. Make sure the voiceover does do that.
I'll see what I can do. But a lot of the story is it starts with a woman. The main character's name is Beatrice, and she receives a phone call that after she hasn't heard from her second husband Fred in about 25 years since she kicked him out of the house, and she gets the call that he's finally dropped dead.
Oh.
So before that she can go out and celebrate and party with the rest of the family, it dawns on her, because they never divorced, it's going to be up to her and her adult children to clean up his last mess. And it all drags them back in that manic, chaotic world they thought they left behind.
Wow.
So the story's kind of told from the perspective of Beatrice's oldest son. And we deal a lot in the book with how they close up the estate. It's not a lot of estate, it's not a huge estate, but you have to deal with the police and realtors and the attorneys and then all the stepchildren and the stepbrothers and sisters and the stepcousins and all that minutia craziness. And at the same time, we do some flashbacks throughout the book, and you get an understanding of, kind of what their life was like once Fred invaded their space. It's kind of dark and it's twisty. The themes in the book all about survival and the bonds that families make together or break as a result of the crap that they're going through. I've got in there the complicated mother-daughter relationship and struggling for their own voice. There's issues around physical and mental and alcohol and drug abuse.
Wow, sounds like a typical family.
Well, it can be very dark and twisty, but it's also very funny and it's very sarcastic and it's got the backdrop of the 1970s in it. So there's a lot of, kind of humor related around that and some of people's reactions to it. So
super cool.
Been extremely fortunate so far. It's out on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble and on my website if you want a hard copy of it.
And your website is?
vrickpeoples.weebly.com. If you want it electronically, it's on Kobo, iTunes, the Nook, and Kindle as well.
Awesome. So you did self-publish?
I did go through the self-publishing process. So.
How was that? And what made you decide self-published versus traditional?
It's kind of funny when you think about self-published or, being an independent author.
Yes, that's the way you're supposed to say it now.
I'm supposed to say on my card, I'm an independent author.
Politically correct.
Yeah, exactly. I think that to make me go through it is the fact that it took so long to get the book together. You work like a crazy person to get the book done. And you think when you're finished and you finally do the I'm done, you think it's over. You think I've delivered this wonderful being, this wonderful product to throw into the world. And then you realize, oh gosh, my work is just starting. So the thought of going through the traditional route and going through the writing letters and sending them out to prospective publishers or literary agents and going through what could potentially be another 6 months to a year.
Oh, a minimum.
Before anyone sees your work. My AD&D.
Not to mention the negative denied that you keep getting back.
Well, yeah,
right?
that too. So so basically, you write this thing, and then you've got another 2 to 3 years before you even get someone who's interested in talking about it. Mm-hmm. Then you go through their process of editing and refining and letting their voice be on top of it. And that's only if you get some little quirky kid that's excited about, ooh, this sounds kind of funny. Let me read it. Do you know what I mean? You get a small group of people that are going to make a decision on whether you're allowed to see, your book is going to see work or not. So I went the self-published route because I wanted it out there, number one. Mm-hmm. And two, with technology today, so many people have an avenue to voices that they didn't have before. So, there's a lot of great stuff out there that doesn't have the backing of a huge publishing house. The challenge is trying to get other people to see it and other people to realize it.
Sure. How did you come about that title, Hey Ma, Your Husband's Dead?
I have to tell you, my brother gave me the title. So, I have to thank him for that. The original working title for the book was Fred, Who Has Dropped Dead. But when I was doing some testing, it just seemed to be too long. It wasn't kicking, and Drop Dead Fred was already copywritten, so I couldn't use that as well.
Oh, interesting.
So I came up with Hey Ma, Your Husband's Dead, and I thought, it was kind of really sarcastic and kind of funny when you think about, they leave a note for the mother on the refrigerator that, hey, guess what, your husband is dead. So
I love it. I love that it has the coffee stain on the Post-it. That is the best.
So that's how it came from.
And then on the cover there with the Post-it, because we talk about all the time the struggles that you have as an author beyond the writing portion as you're coming up with cover art. So was there some sort of onus behind coming up with that Post-it note, complete with the coffee stain?
It's funny. The cover went through a lot of different iterations, a lot of different variations on where it needed to go. I needed something that was gonna, you judge a book by its cover, regardless of what people say.
Sure.
And you had to find something. So I decided that very early on that I was going to control the process as much as I can because, I'm a control freak on top of it. But the other challenge is I'm also extremely cheap. So I didn't want to have to go through the expenses of trying to find someone and going back and forth and helping them. So, I've helped a few friends with their covers, and I've gone through...
Me included.
But it was like, hey, what do you think about this? Oh, I'm not sure about the color in this. Let's change this a little bit. Let's add that. And I just couldn't go through that process with myself when I just would want to own it totally. So I went out there and I looked at different, websites where I could buy some pictures that I could mess around with, and that's basically what came from. We started off with a guy on a toilet because in the book Fred is found dead on a toilet, and I thought that would be kind of fun.
You're giving away all the good stuff, Rick.
Oh no, that's only in chapter 1. So But throughout the book, so I just tried to find a bunch of different avenues to explore. We thought we'd try to tie in the 1970s theme by doing some paneling. And then finally, what is probably the most sarcastic thing you could think of and the most uneventful, hey, Ma, your husband's dead, would be just to not have this tearful scene, but just slap a Post-it note on the refrigerator in hopes that she gets it, when she comes home from work.
I absolutely love it.
And some people I did see his original, before I even read any of his writing, he showed me the original cover that he had done. And I thought, okay, there, number one, I want him. I knew he was good.
She was stalking people
in
the class.
I was total. Every week when we would all read, and sometimes we would read and not know who wrote it.
Yes.
And Shelly and I would leave, and I'd be like, okay, who do you think wrote that? Because they're good. Yeah. Okay, that one.
I remember that.
I don't want to talk to that one. Yeah. So it's
no, there wasn't anyone I said wasn't good.
Right.
So was that, sorry to get back to the book
thank you.
for a second. Was that Post-it note scene in the book prior to picking that as the cover?
No, not at all. I was I was looking for a quick visual that would draw people in. So I did some research on what colors sell on books.
Oh, cool.
So
cool.
the kind of the yellowy bright colors is one of the colors that people are kind of drawn to off a bookshelf.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, crap, my colors aren't bright.
That's why I picked a dark color.
I know.
I don't want your sales to be better than mine. So, and plus the refrigerator kind of gave you that it's not a current time type of thing.
Right,
so
it's very
vintage look to it.
And did you end up writing that to become a scene in the book?
I did not.
No.
I did not.
That's not how she finds out in the book.
That's not how she finds out.
That's a dirty, rotten trick.
Yes, it is.
It's great,
I like
though.
it.
It's a good trick, right?
Thank you very much. I wrestled with that for a very long time about how I could get it to work, and I think Deb and I had a lot of conversations about it's not in there, how do I make it in, how do I walk away with it? And the key is you just want someone to pick up the book and say, well, that looks interesting.
And it gives you a
let
feel.
Me get inside. It gives you a little bit of flavor.
And that's important, right? You know what kind of book you're getting. Like, this isn't, she's not going to be bawling her eyes out.
Right.
No, it's not deep. It's sarcastic.
And I didn't
but it could be.
But I didn't want it to be, I didn't want it to be a murder mystery. I mean, I did one with a toe tag. I did one with, just a picture of this dilapidated house that the character was actually living in. Mm-hmm. And it didn't give me the flavor that I wanted for the book. It gave it kind of more of a dark, morose, and it's not this book.
Murder, like serial killer buried bodies.
Yeah. You designed the book cover yourself.
Yes,
you picked out the fonts.
He did everything.
Did everything. Okay, so that leads me to the total costs.
Okay.
Of self-publishing, total. So when somebody has a wedding and they say, "Oh, I spent $5,000." I said, "Did that include the stamps for your reply?
Or
Did
the
that
dress?
include the dress?
The $5,000 dress?
Like was that just catering?
Yeah.
What's really?"
So
the total cost.
I'm not the typical. First of all, I'm always worried about what to spend because you're sitting here and you've always got those self-doubts, that head trash that I call it, going on. Oh, you're not really good. You really stink. You got no business doing this. You're awful.
Are you in my head right now?
We all do that.
Exactly. Is this on?
He literally is in our ear.
But you go through this mess and you're like, well, how much do I spend and how big is my ego that I'd be willing to spend tons and tons of money on something that's not going to take off or may not take off? Though in the back of your hope, you're hoping that Oprah's calling and you're getting on Reese's webpage and everybody loves you and there's movie deals coming in all the time. But the reality is, they ain't going to happen right away. And I think you said it best last night when you talked in our writing group. You said you're in it for the long haul.
It's a marathon.
It's not a sprint. So I tried to contain the costs as much as I could, which meant I found an editor, and an editor is very important. You need to have an editor. You can't self-edit no matter how much you think or how good you are. Mm-hmm. I actually had 4 people go through my book on pretty big with tunes. My daughter, who did that work for you, was the main editor.
Okay.
I had a very good friend of mine, Betty Hargraves, who just worked me through the whole process over the years of, hey, what do you think about this? Here's a chapter. And she would kind of beat me up. And then I had an incredible woman, Mary Soares, who came through it and went through it with a fine-tooth comb and said, there's a comma, there's a spelling mistake. If you say very one more time, I'm going to kill you. and we went through it and kind of, tried to make it work. So the cost in the editing was fairly inexpensive, though I had to promise my daughter 10% of the proceeds.
Love it.
Moving forward.
Smart girl.
It was really good. Now she's hoping, we didn't talk about movie rights, but that's a whole nother story.
Now you were looking for grammatically correct
I was looking
editing.
And that's a great point.
Basically was your focus.
Because we were talking an awful lot about, what do you have people edit for? So Rebecca went in for the story pieces.
Okay.
Does
good.
this make sense? Did I leave a door open here that it should have been closed over there? Did this character all of a sudden have a different name? Did it make sense? There's a couple of fight scenes, a couple of craziness, and I want to make sure, did they sound too similar? Where, how do I make sure that works? And did the voice of the characters make sense? Because I started writing this book years ago. I picked it back up again, and my style and my voice changed a little bit, so I had to figure out how to make that all work.
Okay.
Then there's another person went through it with the grammatical error thing. Mm-hmm. And then there was another one to just read it from a perspective like, wow, that's pretty funny, but that won't make sense, or that won't play for this particular group. So when you get an editor, you've really got to figure out what you want them to edit.
Awesome.
How long does it take to self-publish once the work is done?
Well, I didn't figure out the time, and that's a great question to look at it. So typically, you finish the work, then you go through the edit process. You can't stand it anymore. You put it down, you go back, and you edit some more. Then you design a cover, whether it's something you do or you have someone else design it for you.
Which takes time. I mean, how long would you say it took?
Well, the cover was a work in progress, so I hadn't finished the book when I was working on the cover. So you saw several iterations of the cover over months of just trying to figure out what that would look like. And when I finished the book, I'd say the cover was finished within 2 weeks of getting the final edit back.
See, Deb, he started his cover before his book was finished. Just take note.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I know.
Just saying.
But then
Seems
there's
like
the whole
some sort of dig there.
No, she's just reminding us all that she has all her covers done.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good, but you've got to be careful that you may want to change it around depending upon
True.
how it ends. So
Very true.
So it's got to be very fluid. And then there's the whole process of how do you format it, and taking the time to make sure that it reaches certain formats. So internet is your friend. YouTube is out there. There's a lot of stuff out there just besides surfing for porn. There's a bunch of stuff out there.
Why was he
Why is
looking at me?
Why was he looking at you, Jonathan?
You had that look like, wait a minute, he didn't look at my history, did he? Clear history.
Private browsers. So the
Oh, did you see that?
No, I did
You
not.
missed it? I caught it.
it was palpable on the podcast, I'm sure.
What else is new? I missed it.
But I think that the challenge here is you've got to get in there and you've got to mess around and take your time. So there's a lot of things out there. I did a lot of research on what font looked better than compared to the other fonts. How does it make your book look?
For formatting, why not just buy? Isn't there one or two programs out there that'll help you format a book?
Absolutely. There are a ton of formats out there, but like if you get into some of the bigger normal houses like Create Space or Draft Digital, you're limited to what they can get away with. So, for example, in my book, we do a lot of voiceover from the main character. And I wanted her font to stand out a little bit different compared to everybody else's. But if I'm using a format like that, it won't let me do that.
Oh.
Even if you own the program?
Yes.
No kidding.
So it's a limitation of the program. Now, there are a lot of great places out
Interesting.
there that you can go gosh, there's book marketing templates out there that you can get anything. You can spend anywhere from $20 to $365. And then get really fancy and funky. And again, I'm tight. I didn't want to spend any money because I didn't know where it was going to be. So between... I printed business cards. That was $30.
Okay.
I had to buy the ISBN numbers. That's the government number that you need to put on your book to say that you own it.
Okay.
I did that for myself because I wanted to own the work. You certainly could publish on any one of the sites that allow you to publish, and you can get one of their ISBN numbers if you wanted to. But ultimately, they kind of own your book. Even though you're the owner, the publisher is Amazon or the publisher is Kobo. And I just didn't want that. So that was probably the most expensive investment. So that was like $285, $290.
I think
for
it's
10.
$400 for 10.
I just looked.
Did
I
you
just
check?
double checked my receipt that you told me
Okay.
to. So it was only
Oh, he's
$295
good.
when I
Look at
bought
that.
it.
Now, that was on Create Space?
No, I went
No,
to
you-
ISBN, the network, and bought them directly from them. A
Okay.
company called Bowker, Bowker.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have to do that.
And so I bought my own. That was the big
That's
cost.
this.
And it's that wonderful little thing down the bottom in the corner of the book.
Right, but I know on Create Space you can...
You can get theirs.
Get theirs.
You can get theirs, and you can get yours from Amazon, and you can get yours from Barnes & Noble. But I didn't want to. But they become the publisher of record,
Okay.
and I wanted to maintain the publishing rights to my book.
Okay.
Yeah, I did some Shutterstock. That's the company I use to get my stuff for my different, the print for my books,
Yep.
the covers. I did some printing, so when I was going through the whole editing thing, I needed to print the book out for other people. That was probably a very expensive cost versus giving it to them. I mean, it's difficult to hand someone, here's a file, it's 300 pages, why don't you just print it out and use your own ink?
And then spend hours.
And then spend hours
working
swearing
for
at
me
you.
for
trying
free.
Exactly. So, I printed a few of those out. That was like $75. And then ordered some proofs. So all in all, I'm in it for about $468.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Deb.
But that was me
Jonathan.
being extremely ridiculously cheap and
Frugal.
And
Yeah, we like to
frugal.
use the word
Yeah,
frugal.
I
I was
consider myself very frugal.
Extremely
but clearly
frugal.
not.
But again, it was also me forcing myself. So I learned how to format. Now, is it perfect? Probably not.
How
Can you
many
go into that?
hours? Just a guess. Just a rough guess. would you
It's
say?
difficult because I don't sleep. So I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning sometimes, or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'll go downstairs, and that's usually when I like to write, or I'll mess around with, how do I format this? How do I learn this? Where do I learn this type of stuff? And, I'll spend a couple hours, and then 8 o'clock, the coffee's on, then I'm off doing something else. So,
Would you say 10 hours or 100?
I would say probably closer to about the 40 hours.
40 hours to format.
All said and done for formatting. And that's the education
That's
person. That's
learning,
learning
right.
it and then figuring out how to make it work. And then going back in because Word does this crazy thing that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So you have to go back in and eyeball every single page to make sure it works. So, if you haven't got the patience or if you haven't got the time or the inclination, certainly hiring someone to give you a good look is the way to go.
In the end, you eventually have to pull the trigger and say, this is now being published.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you could get caught in the minutia of editing and reformatting and let's change this and cover art. At some point, you've got to put a stamp on it and say, this
Right.
is done.
Absolutely.
It's over.
Absolutely. We were at a writing group last night, and one of the guys in the class said there was a director that had a famous quote, which basically says, I'm never finished with a movie, I just abandon it. And from a writing perspective, you've got to get to that point, too, where you just have to say, I can't look at this anymore.
Yeah, the story's
Right.
been told. It's
Yeah.
time for other people to read it.
Exactly.
Besides myself.
So when our
Let it
writing
go.
group started, he had this book finished,
Just
just
about.
about finished,
Yeah, yeah.
but he didn't let us read any of it because he just thought, I can't start all over again with a new group of people and a new group of opinions.
And again, I did give them one chapter to take a look at, and they all hated it, except for... so I'm like,
Except for who, me?
well, you did have that one comment. You liked the nicotine-stained roof, so
Oh,
you
I
thought that
did.
was really good. But
Yeah.
other than that, they're like, I'm confused by this. I'm confused by that.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
like this. And I'm like, I can't do 300 pages of this.
No.
I'll never
No.
get it done. So I took some of their feedback, and I went back in and made some adjustments on the book. But I knew at that point that I'm done. I can't
Right.
do any more other than just fine-tune it with their suggestions because I trust their feedback on how to adjust the rest of the book from there.
And he's working on his next book already. Do you have a title for that?
It's right now. It's called Welcome to the Outlaws. It's
Yeah.
the premise of a large family that all gets together for a huge wedding, and it's told from the perspective of the outlaws or the people that marry into the family.
Oh, I love it.
So when
already.
you get into a family situation, usually they're all together. They're all the cousins having a good time. They're taking pictures with the cousins and the kids. But the people that marry into the family are usually in the corner. They're not in the pictures. They're having a couple of cocktails. They're talking to each other. They're grousing about the family or enjoying what they've got done. So it's all about, it's collectively 12 short stories that are all going to be interwoven into, 2 big events.
Very nice.
It's going to be really good. This is very, very good and has a style, and it really takes you back. There were times when I had to stop reading because I thought, was he spying on my childhood?
Oh, I thought you just hated it. It was
No, it was, and like the brown bread. There was a brown bread scene, and I don't know if that's just a New England thing, but boy, that a can of brown bread takes me right back to my childhood. And so this was, this is amazing in that respect of taking you back in time and into the family, and if you grew up in a family of full of dysfunction, and there was some
Who hasn't?
right.
I think everybody's family is dysfunctional in a
some
certain way.
way.
It's just the way the way you're looking at it, and it's all about guarding yourself and guarding your family secrets and
Right.
letting out certain things when you're comfortable with it.
Well,
So
I feel
this
like we
was
could
great.
do about 3 or 4 more podcasts with Rick.
Well, I think
so we
he'll
should
have
have him
another
back
book
on again.
coming
He'll
out
have his
soon.
next book coming.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Rick. We're going
Thank
to
you
take a
very
little
much.
tiny little walk around our little neighborhood.
Sure, thank you.
And of course, I wish that I had an update, but I have nothing. I got this. So I'm
Well,
going to
that's
pass it
okay.
right over to you, Deb, because you've got some exciting news for us.
Well, yes, I'm just confirming that we are still on track to have our launch party next week. That Well-Behaved Woman Coming Undone is going to be released next Tuesday. It'll be available on Amazon. And we'll have a little party here. Yay! Should be fun. And fortunately, last week I asked some of our listeners to reach out to me to say how to give presents.
Yes.
Because I like to make things for people. And I want to make things for my readers. And I received quite a few interesting ideas. So there will definitely be some presents available for my readers. I'm thinking I'm going to do it for a whole year.
I love it.
So
I love
That'd
it.
be great.
Yeah, that's the plan. So we'll have more information on that next week at the launch party.
Exciting. Well, thank you for listening. And please check out the Writer's Block NH Facebook and the Writer's Block podcast on Podbean or your favorite podcast catcher. And thanks again, Rick.
Thank you very much.
We hope to inspire, empower, and be well.
Love it.
Attention cigar smokers or even friends of a cigar smoker. If you're looking to relax with a nice premium cigar or looking for a great gift for a cigar smoker, this is the gift that keeps on giving. Our friends at twoguyscigars.com have created the Cigar of the Month Club. For just $19.99 per month, you or a friend will receive 4 different premium handmade cigars every month, and shipping and handling is included.
Contact twoguyscigars.com. That's the number 2, guyscigars.com, and go to the Cigar of the Month Club. You can stop anytime because there's no contract, but you won't. This is a tremendous deal for our listeners. Go to twoguyscigars.com. That's the number 2, guyscigars.com, and click the Cigar of the Month Club.
At the same time, if you want to learn more about the cigars you receive each month, you can smoke along with them on our own podcast called The Cigar Authority. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a nice premium cigar from our friends at twoguyscigars.com.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.